Blog Talk Radio.
Yo, what's up, world? It's badass thuggin' like I usually do, and you better turn it up, bust some speakers out, cause we off the motherfucking cuff. You dig how we do it? Dog Pound Gangsters 2000 and beyond. Black.
Yo, check this out. This is your girl, Polo Rican, and I'm chilling with my boys right here on Off the Cuff Radio. Cause we off the cuff right now. You dig?
Bet. What's up? It's your boy Lil Yap from UNLV, bragging up from the river, cooling with my homies and my family at Off the Cuff Radio. Y'all be sure to tune in on Fridays and get the latest scoop and find out what's happening. You heard me?
Tiffany Lavon.
And it's Queen Crazy, your girl favorite bartender.
And we're from
Sex on the Rocks podcast.
Alright, you're now tuning in to Off the Cuff Radio.
Yeah, because they keep representing that real hip hop. Well, much love.
Alright.
Y'all, this is Miss Irresistible giving a shout out to the livest show on Friday nights Off the Cuff Radio. And I'm live from the 704. Make sure y'all tune in for the blazing hot music.
Hey y'all, this is Stacey Lachey giving a shout out to King Eric and Off the Cuff Radio.
What's shaking, y'all? This is the Grand, one half of Lost Cause and 1/3 of that drive time thing. Sending my love to the homies over at Off the Cuff Radio. Tune in every Friday night for some real deal hip-hop conversation. These dudes are the connoisseurs of this thing. You already know what it is. BX Stand Up, HUD City, we're shaking. Peace.
Yo, this is Dope Fresh to Dine, and y'all tuned in to the most raw, uncut show on radio, the Guillotine Team, Off the Cuff, and yo, Eric, Sandman, off to these clowns' heads.
And we are now tuned in at episode 364 of the most live and direct show, Off the Cuff Radio. I'm your host this morning, King Eric with the Great. And I got my co-host on the line, T-Max with the facts.
Look, Sunday morning a.m. on Off the Cuff. No better place to be than right now, man. And King, we've had some special shows. We've had legendary shows. We've had tremendous shows. And this morning, we got a guest that encompasses incredible, special, legendary, and tremendous, and that's just putting it lightly.
And we got to give it the breakdown, man. This is a special show, man, because this man's contributions go beyond hip-hop. We talking not only hip-hop, but film, television, fashion, producing, modeling, beyond the scenes. Like, he's respected by many of your favorite rappers.
And to add on to that, King, when you look at hip-hop, it's a cross-cultural phenomenon of fashion, music, and art. This gentleman we have this morning, if you don't know this man's history in terms of him being one of the founding, members of the legendary Low Life crew out of New York, and beyond that, going to his music and his artistic endeavors, that you got to get familiar. He encompasses the very essence of everything the creative spirits and energy in hip-hop represents. Words can't do enough justice for what this man has done for the culture, and as we get into this conversation with him today, you're going to find out exactly how legendary his contributions are that are on par with anything that your favorite rapper, Jay-Z, E40, Nas, his shit is on par with anything they've done and arguably beyond that. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we welcome Mr. Victor De Jesus, a.k.a. Thirstin Howl III. Welcome, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, man. You know what I mean? No breakfast and all. So it's on and popping. Thanks for that introduction, too, man. Appreciate that.
Man, we appreciate you, man. Thurston, we got to say, first of all, man, that bio you sent us was something unbelievable. It took us like a couple weeks to get through everything because we really had to process and do our homework in terms of really, really, really breaking down everything you've done. I mean, this shit you've done is incredible in your career, man. I mean,
thank you.
You know, I mean, this is, I mean, me and King were like, where are we even going to start with all of this? So, we'll just get to the basics of it, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself from your upbringing, you know, and, you know, how you found your way into the game in terms of this thing called hip-hop.
Well, you know, Thirstin Howl, born in New York City, Far Rockaway, Queens. You know, I was born before hip-hop was born, so I was able to absorb everything that ever came through from hip-hop, you know, from the genesis of it all. I was able to absorb it all as a kid, you know, just becoming a fan of the fashion first, and then, you know, the music after, the graffiti, the breakdancing, the DJing. I pretty much touched the, you know, some of everything in the culture. And, you know, growing up in Brownsville, Brooklyn, where I became a man, things like that, and you know, led me on to the crazy life and just, you know, doing the things that happened in Brownsville. But at all times, no matter what was going on in my life, I was a fiend for hip-hop, man. I mean, a fiend. I'm not a fan. I'm a fiend, and there's a difference, you know? It's like being the crackhead on the, you know, that I was a fiend for hip-hop in that way. I'll search for it. You know, I'll go to every place that is happening. You know, I was that much into just living the culture, man, by any and all means.
You know, and, you know, during that time especially, I mean, you growing up in Brownsville, we got to shout out our friends too, man. Lays, you know, Billy Dance, you know, MOP, everybody, man. You know, it's just to see
just
that
everybody
whole
from the old New York, we got to shout out.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Shout out
you
MOP. You know, consider MOP the kings of Brownsville. As far as musically, you know, they were super, super consistent. So they was able to snatch their spot and keep it forever to this day, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, to really see that, I mean, to watch, you know, hip-hop is something that went all over the world as it really, really, really developed. But you had to be there to really, in New York at that time, to really see it develop. I mean, of course, starting, you know, 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, the Bronx, you know, of course, with DJ Kool Herc with the two turntable technique, of course, 78 with the Sugar Hill Gang, you know, going to the 80s with Def Jam. And, I mean, you were in the middle of all of this in terms of seeing it. I mean, as you saw this, Thurston, as it developed, and you were, you know, like just in the middle, did you really see something? Was it something you enjoyed that you became a fiend for? Did you really know that it was going to be what it was in terms of, because your story is phenomenal in terms of how you would end up being one of the cultural ambassadors, the fashion ambassadors for where the fashion would end up going. But at the time, did you see where it was going to go in terms of this was going to be something really huge?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I don't think any of us thought it would be what it is today. We didn't have a clue, man. I mean, I was just living my life accordingly, you know, without any intentions of trying to be a fashion icon or even thinking I'm going to become a hip-hop artist, man. I was just living my life. This was how I was living my life. It was natural. It was organic. You know, it was what made me me. You know what I mean?
And starting out with your, you know, developing your craftsmanship, how did you come up with the name Thirstin Howl III?
Well, you know, when I started rapping, my original name was my low-life name, which was Big Vic the Barbarian. You know, that was the name I was called. You know, that was my characteristics in my low-life days. So when I became a rapper, I just stuck with that name. But it really wasn't the name for me as a rapper. You know, I started to develop my style and things like that, and I became a hungry MC who just wanted to battle everybody. So as I ran around everywhere looking for people to battle on a regular basis, you know, my friends started calling me thirsty. Oh, man, you thirsty. I ain't going nowhere with you. You too thirsty. You just want to battle, and that's all I was into. So when I became Thirstin Howl, when I discovered my style, the thirsty kind of stuck with it, and I added on the, you know, the howl and everything, and it just got carved in stone from there. But I got the name from being a, you know, a hungry battle rapper wanting to hunt everybody down.
You know, Thirstin, and I'm laughing because, you know, this shows how far ahead New York was, like, ahead of everybody else with the lingo and the slang. Well, you know, because we have thirsty nowadays in other connotations, but y'all were using it back then. I mean, so this is just a testament
it was kind of you know, it had the same definition.
Go ahead.
It had the same definition because I was thirsty. I was thirsty to hunt down rappers, you know, the same definition that's used today. You know, so it basically stuck with me. You know, in Brownsville, that, you know, a lot of Brownsville cats known for robbing and stealing, they always considered us thirsty regardless, just for, you know, we didn't let anything go by us without taking it in Brownsville. So it kind of stuck to the whole Brownsville stigma as well.
Mhm. Yeah, man.
And do you care to also? Hey, I ain't mean to cut you off, man, but you care to also
go ahead,
be more in depth on how involved you got with in terms of graffiti, because graffiti played a key role in the early elements of hip hop.
I mean, I believe I was a graffiti writer first, man. Like even before I was 10 years old, you know, I started doing tags. You know, I started copying a lot of the writers I seen from Far Rockaway, Queens. You know, and Far Rockaway was flooded with graffiti writers, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s and all of that. So, I mean, that was I would say my initial way of getting into hip-hop as far as doing hip-hop in any form, you know. Like, I was a fiend for the music as well, but so was the graffiti. You know, drawing the characters and doing the letters, and, you know, I really was consumed by it mentally, man, at that early age, and, you know, started stealing markers on a regular basis, stealing cans of spray paint and things like. I spray paint anything, man. I spray paint my roller skates, my bikes, you know, anything I would create back then.
Yeah, man. I mean, you had guys like Scene, you know, Dez, all of those guys, you know, with their tags, you know, and of course, if it's not incriminating nothing, what tag did you go by to really let everybody know about your art?
I mean, I went by the tag Ryer, R-I-E-R. I wouldn't consider myself like an all city king or nothing like that. You know, I was still really young when I became a writer, so I wasn't out there tagging everywhere. You know what I mean? I was more in the black books and doing pieces and, you know, tagging locally in the school where I lived or my own building at the time.
Yeah, man. But I mean, you know, looking at all those guys, you know, you had guys like The Fear, Phase 2, you know, I mean, you know, and you were right up in the mix of it. And a lot of people really don't understand today in terms of how integral that was to the culture in terms of really, you know, just, you know, showing your artistic ability, bigging up your hood, just letting everybody know who you were, you know, whether anonymously or directly. What were those days in New York like in terms of just, you know, really just going on the corner, you know, whether you in Harlem, you know, on 125th, whether you in the Bronx, on, you know, 145th and 141st in Cypress, you know, I mean, just anywhere you go, what was it like just to see everybody pop locking, just just rhyming, and I mean ultimately seeing the fashions really develop?
I mean, it was crazy, man. It was an experience, And, being that I did go everywhere, I was able to see what was happening in Harlem, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, and Queens. And, I think in New York City it was the only place I ever really seen the culture in all elements live in the air, on the streets, on the radio, on the subway. It was existing in your face. It wasn't a thing about television or radio. This culture was alive in your face in New York City. When you walked out your building, you can smell it. You can see it everywhere you turn. You see the attitude of the people. You've seen the big fat laces on the Adidas. You've seen those Kangos just everywhere, So I always felt blessed, man, to be from New York, to have been brought up in probably one of the biggest cultures of the world. I consider it the biggest thing that united the gaps of the world culturally, which is hip hop,
Yeah, man. And I mean, seeing you win everywhere, Thirstin, did you see a lot of the artists like, of course, Run DMC and Hollis, Big Daddy Kane in Brooklyn, did you see a lot of these artists, before they became big in terms of knowing them prior to?
Many artists. Not Run DMC per se, but many artists just living in New York, you see an artist just walking down the street, a big famous artist. You can be in Midtown and bump into Diddy walking. That's a normal thing for New York. But yeah, me personally, I got to grow up and know a lot of artists before they became big or before they got their shot and things like that, I grew up around Helter Skelter. I knew Black Rob before he became a star. Dancers like IBM, dancers like Loose Joint. There's a long list of people I could mention, man, but, you be in the midst of people, man, before they become these big stars, and you see a lot of them always had that star quality, and they were just destined to be that. Like Black Rob, for instance, he was destined to be who he became. He was naturally that.
Right.
I think that's the good part about seeing these guys before, because it's kind of like how you see the NBA players before they hit the pros. You see how nice they were as a college when they undeveloped stages, and when you see them in the pros, you see them flourish like that. So seeing the origins of where they came up is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Shannon Briggs as well, the boxer. He comes from my projects in Brownsville. And I remember there was a time when I was bigger than Shannon, and then to see the mountain he grew to be and all of that is crazy. But it's like it was certain things that, like I said, you knew people were destined to be that because they had it in them so much, man. It was just a matter of time.
Man, and if we got a little bit of time in the show, because we got a lot to talk about, because there's an interesting story about Shannon and yourself in one of your videos that you shot, and hopefully we can get to that, because that really shows that you really were the heavyweight champion of your hood. Now, fashion has always been a heavy element in hip-hop, and when we look at where it is now, where the Gucci, the Louis Vuitton, all of that's pretty much commonplace now. But in its early stages, in its nascent phases of development, dressing fly was always an everyday thing in the hood. We all know this. And when you get into the part of the music where it's all about presentation, because you're really trying to sell that image, it takes on an even more, it's even more imperative for the image. I got introduced to the education of, the lowlife. Shout out to Source Magazine. This is over 20 years ago that they did a 3-part series on you all, and that 3-part series I did. I immersed myself in to read. Shout out to Racklow, Foxlow, everybody, man. I mean, it was just unbelievable, man. And I mean, as much information as I got from that, it's still like, after I really did the research, I was like, yo, like, this shit is just way more than just that. I mean,
the layers of it is real deep.
It is.
Yeah.
How did you all come together? Because this, during the time of New York is, and me and King, we always respectfully have our running joke about the old New York. Like, a lot of these young boys, they don't really understand how real it was back in the day. The days of Rich Porter, the Decepticons gang, Zulu Nation. It was serious back then. And, your crew was right up in the midst of it. And y'all were real. Y'all were thorough with it. How did you all come together?
I mean, a lot of it began with just we all lived in the same projects, in Brooklyn, Brownsville. So, a lot of us in New York City, man, when we used to come outside to play every day. So you become acquainted with everybody who lives in your project, not just the people in your building and things like that. So just seeing everybody, everybody who was my friends, we were graffiti writers, we were break dancers, things like that, and we were also all part of the struggle of poverty and the projects, man. So these are the people that you come outside with every day. Y'all probably scrounge up to get a hero together or things. So you go through all these things in life where you become bonded. And, that's what happened for a lot of us out of my project. Everybody wanted to get fly, so they would get on the missions as well. And this was something we were introducing to people in our neighborhood, another form of another hustle that was able to be had. But, it was way more than that, because it was also about defending where we were from, because, people were coming through there trying to take what we had or just trying to disrupt the peace within our side of things, man. So, we became a real brotherhood through all the trials and tribulations of all the things that go on when you're living in the project, man. It was crazy. But it was beautiful at the same time, like people just think, it's a harsh life and things like that when you grow up in the inner city. But, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world, because when I came outside, man, I had 1,000 friends to talk to and be with every day, and I look at these kids growing up in these beautiful suburbs and things like that, and they don't have one friend to come outside to. There's a big difference on how you're able to grow. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by all these different kind of personalities and characters, and absorb that as education, man. So it did way more for me than what it did on the street level, It had a lot to do with my education, my vocabulary, just my everyday life experiences, just by being surrounded by so many people on a daily basis.
Yeah, man.
And
you know what?
I think having those experiences, like, face-to-face experiences, that also inspires your hustle to go harder, man. Because you could tell the difference between today's era and the era when you came up with. Like, everything, it felt more organic. And sometimes simpler is even better. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was beautiful, man. It definitely had a lot to do with molding my character. I don't really know what's going on in today's society, man, but I just believe that, kids are just confined to themselves and their computers or their phones. So they're not able to absorb, what a real friendship feels like. Like everybody got friends on social media, but not the same like the friend you hang out with every day. You see the problems occurring in his house. Not too much being done just to portray an image, where you're seeing the actual factual things happen. In today's era, it's just about what image you can uphold online. When they see you in person, it's never really that. It's just the image that's being upheld. Like you were saying earlier about me as an artist and the image I came with and things like that. But, the way I always looked at it is I just came with being myself. I never was looking for an image to portray. I was always here trying to be myself, The most I did was portray a character in my rhymes, I was a big fan of Dana Dane. I was a big fan of Jimmy Spicer and these artists, and like the Rapping Duke and things like that. I seen all of these artists form and become characters on songs. And to me, that was like super creative, man. And, I'm always into creativity first. I always want to be creative. I always wanted to come with, something outside of the box. So when I became an artist, I didn't want to rap about the street life and things like that. I didn't want to talk about what I was doing on the street. I wanted to be innovative. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to turn into a character. I wanted to bring you into my imagination. So that's what I always set out to do. So I kind of put my real life on the back burner at first and just came creatively and comically on all of my music, just because it was organic. It came naturally that way.
One thing about it, Thirstin, is this is easily probably one of the most research shows we had to do because we really had to really dig.
Very informative too, man. I mean, we did a lot of studying, man, and just for being an independent artist and you put in the amount of work that you put in, it was just intriguing to read all these accomplishments and bringing them to the light for our audience. I just wanted to put that out there.
And we're not even talking about the videos yet. I mean, dude, I went on your page, on your YouTube page, Thirstin Howl the Third on YouTube. For those that don't know, go subscribe. The man's got some dope shit up there. And I was looking at the video you did.
Stuck there. Got stuck for 3 days to my page.
Yes. That's why I said it's a lot. It's so much. He had to break it down into 3 different segments. We're going to get to that. Oh, but we got a lot. So I was watching a video that you did from
KRS-One said it best today. You must learn today.
Yes. And I was watching that video you did from 1986, with Sha Rock on the 1s and 2s, man. And I'm like, y'all were just having that freestyle session. And I'm like, this dude was like, you was bodying it then. I mean, when you really wanted to go ahead and be an artist in terms of really getting, really getting your rap rocks off with it, what was the writing process like for you really developing it? Because a lot of artists talk about, why I made it, this, that, and the other, but they never really talk about the writing process, what inspires them, and how, just the nuances, setting your bars up, catching the beats, understanding, just your rhythm in terms of riding it. What was that like for you to really just start out with it?
I mean, like you said, you saw the 1986 freestyle, right? Now, it was exactly that, a freestyle off the top of the dome. There was nothing written back then. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Everything was just freestyle, spontaneous. So being a freestyle rapper, writing rhymes is extremely easy, and they come extremely fast because of your freestyle abilities. You know what I mean? So that has always been kind of my process with it. When I'm given the beat, I just start playing with it in the freestyle, and all the lines just start coming to my head. And naturally, like, the crazy thing about the 1986 freestyle is that I wasn't pursuing rap back then. I just went in the studio with Sha Rock that day because he used to rent studio time just to practice turntables and all that. So we went in there that day just to hang out and kick it. And, just so happened that they had a video camera set up, and we was able to pay $5 and record our whole session that day. And then the funny thing about it is that was at Funky Slice Studios in Brooklyn. This was 86, man, $5.
Oh man!
So I never pursued it even after that day. I freestyled all day long, and then when that day left, I had no interest in rhyming again until maybe 10 years after that.
And we're glad that we're glad you never stopped. That you decided to pick up the mic again, because my first introduction, I'm in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Shout out to Source Magazine, because without them, I would have never discovered you, and a lot of other artists. But I was always an underground hip-hop head anyway. So my first introduction, and I got to send you this picture because of the October 97 Source Magazine where you went to Unsigned Hype. I still have that issue. It's a shameless plug for Source because I have every magazine since 1994 to now. So, I'll send you a picture. But it's to see, you getting in that. My first introduction to you, Thirstin, came in 1999 with the Polo Rican single. Shout out to DJ's Music and Video in Norfolk, Virginia, because that's where they would always get the underground shit in. And I just seen it, and it's their game recordings, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, and I listened to it, and I heard this, and he like, "Oh, call me done." I was like, all right, I'm liking this already.
And that was the first line.
Yeah.
Don't call me done till finished.
Yeah, that was like, it's just the way that delivery you came in with, man. And I was like, it just was so unorthodox and unique. But when I listened to it, because like I said, I didn't know about the crew until a couple years later in Source Magazine. So that was my first introduction to you, just listening to you as an artist. But that's when I was like, okay, I got to get more of this dude. And that's where, the License to Skillionare Island, as much album materials I could get from you that DJs had, because this is before, y'all got to understand this, boys and girls, this is before the days of eBay and Amazon. Well, Amazon was still around because it started in 1995. It just wasn't Amazon like we know it today. And eBay wasn't around like that, talking about yet, in terms of where that was. I'll take that back. I think eBay started in the 90s too. But anyway, but this is before like you really had to dig for a lot of for a lot of that underground stuff. So I grabbed as much stuff from you as I could, and I was just thoroughly impressed because your style was just so it was just indescribably incredible, the type of imagination you had, because it was just, nobody was rhyming like you at the time. And nobody does still today.
A lot of people emulated me over the years, I guess a lot of the underground caught on to my flow. We had a lot to do with, I guess, the evolution of a lot of rappers.
Right.
But I always believed, man, like I said, I'm from the genesis of hip-hop. And you had to be original. That was like the number one rule. I remember the number one rule to hip-hop was you had to be hood. You had to be from the hood, That was the qualification. You had to be hood. Right. You had to be. And I always believed in trying to be as original as possible, man, with anything I do. I might pay homage to a bunch of things or be inspired by things, but I would always flip them in an original way.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I always believe, man, and to this day I stick to that.
when you
And
decided to pick up the
period-
mic again, yeah. Go ahead, King. Go ahead.
And I was going to say that at this period, you grinded it to the unsigned hype, like T-Mac said, and that was my introduction to you as well, because we was looking at the unsigned hype like the next coming, like you know how we would look at the new prospects of the NBA players. We would look at that just like that.
Yeah.
So then after that, you go on to the Rap Olympics and you start teaming with Eminem. What was that experience like?
That was a beautiful experience, man. Learned a lot from all my team members. And, you know, being surrounded by a whole team of hungry, battle, freestyle rappers that will attack you at all times, that, of course, that will sharpen you up even more. You know, everybody on my team was, like, top-notch, off the head, was super skilled with it.
Now,
it was a beautiful.
Now, King said, Thirstin, you met Eminem before he became the Eminem that we know today. What was it like meeting Marshall at that time when he was still starting out? You know, because if everybody knows their history about it, he lost the Rap Olympics, but his tape ended up, you know, with Paul Rosenberg, I believe, who ended up passing it on to Dr. Dre. And, you know, that's how he, you know, found his fame. But what was it like seeing him early on in those days in terms of, did you know that he was headed for the fame that he was headed for?
Yeah, I believe that. I noticed it I think we both felt the same way about each other. The feeling was mutual, where we both expected big things out of each other's career from that point on.
Right.
You know, Eminem was really the truth. I believe he felt the same about me, you know, and we always promised that, whoever makes it first will be on each other's albums, things like that. M used to even come and hang out in Brownsville with me, man. Come to the projects and all that.
The stories that we don't... I was just about to say, the stories that we don't always hear about.
Yeah, he was really skilled. He was really the truth, man. I can't take nothing away from that, man. That's why, you know, I be hearing all these other people try to say he got this from so-and-so, or but that man was exactly the way he was when I met him, you know. He was a super MC, you know. Very humble, very cool, very down to earth. You know, and we got along well.
Yeah,
man. Y'all
was
pretty wild, too. Y'all have also great chemistry as well.
Yeah, we used to go hard. I think a lot of times we wouldn't even talk, man. Our whole conversation would be in rap form and freestyle. You know, that's how hungry we were for it, you know.
I can only imagine that dialogue of dope lyrics between y'all. I mean, two rap geniuses, you know, going back and forth. So when you decided to pick up the mic again, and you know, you really took it serious, what was it like in terms of that foray of really finding, you know, that outlet in terms of really, because I believe you were on Game Recordings when you know, start, you know, when you got, you know, when you know, on your first full, like, wide ranging release. But what was it like just getting back into the studio and like, I'm really gonna take this serious? What was the inspiration to decide, you know, maybe I can really do this and like really, really go far with this? Because I mean, your career is just unbelievable in terms of where you started and where you're still going today. What was that like?
I mean, when I did the rap in 1986, like I said, I wasn't pursuing it. I was just freestyling, having fun. I had no intentions of pursuing it. I wasn't trying to be a rapper. I never claimed to be a rapper. So when 10 years later, in 96, I had a freestyle session in my house, in my project, you know, with a lot of dudes from the project, and we just was rapping to a Scarface instrumental, and I started rhyming, and I actually couldn't believe how good I was freestyling, where to the point where I couldn't even stop. the words were just connecting nonstop. And, you know, at this point, hip-hop and rap music is probably the biggest love of my life. So when I seen I had that skill that day, that turned into everyday sessions. To where now I'm putting 150% every day after that one day. You know, down to where I started buying my own equipment. I had to learn how to use a 4-track. You know, I started getting turntables, and I started really just wanting to rhyme every day, man. And that's when I started hunting down rappers, because more than recording, I just wanted to battle. You know, I just wanted to go out there and tear people up, man, and show them I was nice. So, I mean, and that just led on to many other things, you know. Just for me being so consistent with it, so many other things started to develop behind it.
Now,
the journey was,
one thing,
real crazy.
Yeah. One thing about it, Thirstin, is what you said about how you know, and I heard the passion in your voice when you really, because it was like you had that eureka moment of the epiphany where you was like you said, you just put 150% into it. And a lot of the younger generation today really does not understand, and we're not trying to say this is the old geezers of it. We're just trying to give the education to the youth, because this is in the 90s. You know, this is the late 90s. So this is, of course, you know, Yo MTV Raps, Rap City, Video Music Box have already are in full swing. You know, Source Magazine is the place you are. If you get in the Source, you've done something. Or, Word Up Magazine was still around at the time. So, but it's still a situation where this is before the internet as we know it today. This is before YouTube. This is before Twitter. This is before Instagram. This is before MySpace. You know, so this is where you really have to get on the grind. And, I mean, the testament to your tenacity and perseverance, Thirstin, was that you, like you said, you bought the equipment yourself. You know, this is before Pro Tools really becomes a thing, you know, before we have the beat, programs that you can get on a computer. This is before we have camera cell phones to record videos. I mean, so this is the essence of you getting out there on your own and really getting it, you know, and learning everything. Because not only, you know, were you rhyming, but you taught yourself how to use the equipment, making beats, all of this. I mean, this is like you're a one-man enterprise of creative energy. I mean,
did it so far.
Yeah.
But that was only because of my love for it. If my love wasn't that extreme, I wouldn't have pursued it the same way. You know, my love for hip-hop has always been extremely great. Like I said, before I was an artist, I was just a fiend. I had to be everywhere that it was happening. Every concert, every show, I'm buying every piece of music that comes out the day it comes out, studying it, you know, analyzing it, taking the lyrics apart. So, you know, when I became a rapper, I felt like I had the souls of every artist before me in me. You know, I'm able to emulate rappers at this point. I do their voices and everything when they rhyme. So it's just how intense my love for the art was to make me to go the extra length. Because, you know, even when I was rapping at first, I was just rapping over instrumentals. And, I couldn't get a producer to give me a beat for shit. You know, and I knew producers and things like that. For one, nobody believed me when I told them I was a rapper. They thought I was up to something. Nobody knew me to be a rapper. But once I couldn't get beats from producers, I just started buying my own beat machine. I learned, man. I learned to do whatever I needed to do just to keep things going for myself and to get further in this game, you know. I wanted to be respected like everybody else, you know, because that was the main goal in the beginning, was just to be respected for my skills. I don't think I was trying to pursue anything else. I never in a million years believed that I would actually make it to where I have. You know, like that was, I'm sure, a dream, but I didn't really think it would have been reality. You know, so that's what humbled me so much. I'm so grateful to have been able to achieve, man, and in the realm I love the most, and have been able to conquer ground and establish a legacy that, you know, I'll forever be remembered for, you know, for doing just what I love, man. To this day, is what I love. It's not even like it's a job. You know, I get up every day and I do this. I do 20 features a month, and you know, it might seem like it's a lot of work, but when it's what you love, it's really nothing. I could do it on my off time. I could do it in my sleep. It's just second nature to me at this point.
And that's dedication to it, because to give our listeners context on the 96 era, because by then, you know, this is where, you know, when we're looking from 1986 to 96 over a 10-year period, we just got to give a short list of all the albums and artists that they came out during that time, which are hundreds. Obviously, we're not going to name all of them now, but shout out to the East and West Coast and down south, too. So, I mean, just on a short list, we have Kool G Rap, who dropped 4 albums with him and Polo, and then himself as solo during that time. We have some, you know, genius wordsmith out of QB named Nas, who comes out during this time on MC Search's Back to the Grill Again. You know, his first appearance before he dropped Halftime for the Zebrahead soundtrack in 1992. Of course, we have NWA, Straight Outta Compton, 1988. Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted, 1990. We have, you know, Compton's Most Wanted, you know, coming out in 89, you know. I mean, it you know, we're not even getting into Jay-Z, Biggie, you know, and OC, you know, and all of these guys, and Evil. I mean, it's just so many, you know. Too Short had dropped a couple of albums during that era. I mean, so you're like listening to all of these artists, and we can't forget Snoop and Dre. We can't forget them. So you're immersed, as you said, Thirstin, you were immersing yourself in all these artists that were coming out during this time. I mean, what was it? And obviously you knew some of these people coming up. And then, of course, we start, you know, this is a couple of years before the Bling era comes in, where the big money starts rolling. But what was it like just to see a lot of these artists just really, like, as you said, you know, you were inspired, you know, you were trying to do, but, I mean, to just see everybody really going, were you thinking, like, I'm better than a lot of these guys coming in and I just have to have that lane to show it, or were you just looking at it with so much honor, you just wanted to be mentioned among those greats?
I mean, it was a little bit of both. You know, ego plays a big part in this game of hip hop. So, yeah, I wanted to show I was better, but at the same time, I'm a tremendous fan of everybody. So I'm studying them. You know, I'm studying them. That's the only way I could feel I was better, because of how much I studied them and how much I absorbed Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted, EPMD, Strictly Business. You know, all the way to Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five first album. I got to absorb all of it, you know, from West Coast to East Coast. But, you know, I'm a true East Coast head. I'm from Brooklyn. So I was always into the super skilled out lyrics, the crazy punchlines, you know, all the mad verses and all that. So, like I said, man, absorbing it all, man, from every angle it came from. And that's what I have to give credit to for my skill development. All the people before me that, you know, being a fan and loving their music, and, you know, the Big Daddy Kanes, even Jay-Z when he first started. When Jay first came out in the 80s, I knew he was
Big Jazz. With Jazz, though, with Big Jazz, you know, Hawaiian Sophie.
But the originators is what showed his skill. And on Hawaiian Sophie, he maybe said a line or so, you know. But when they dropped the originators, that's when you knew how skilled Jay was, you know. And this is like 89.
Right.
89. Even with him and Big, you know, being neck and neck, once the, you know, mid-90s hit, I still seen Jay as the superior MC over Big. I always, you know, Big would have lived because I believe no matter what, Jay was going to still be who he is today because he was more self-contained and self-built. Big had a lot of assistance. He had Puffy. He had everything that was around him, you know, controlling his development and his rise to success. I mean, Jay initially took it upon himself to make it happen, you know, so I really always admire that. And, you know, like I said, he deserves to be where he is now because of all of that consistency and skills and all that came into play. But, you know, I keep saying, I'm just
considering that he survived so many eras. And considering the fact that he survived so many eras, because this game is full of sharks. So for him to do it at that consistent level and not even really have a fall off, like everybody has a bad album here and there, but it didn't really affect his career. So for him to do it on that consistent level is admiring.
Yeah. I mean, consistency is the key. I believe Jay is the king more because of his consistency than his skills. His skills played a big part, but his consistency is what took him there. You know, never missing a year, dropping an album. You know, I followed that, man. Me as an artist, even though I never had a record deal, ever. Never been signed to no label, none of that. The singles and stuff you heard was just like one-offs, but I always followed Jay's format, and I never missed a year dropping a project. You know, I believe even as an underground artist, you know, or just keeping myself relevant, always dropping every year, man, put me in the position I'm in. You know, it made me a legendary artist, whether I had a record deal or not. I don't know too many artists who didn't have a record deal that survived the times like me and was able to, you know, put themselves out there as much as I did without ever having a machine behind them like a record label to push and promote. You know, I did most of my stuff just off of me making an album. I throw it up in the air and hope the wind catches it and everybody hears it from there, you know?
You know, Thirstin, because that was so much, and I wanted to say this before I lost my train of thought with it because, you know, what you said, because I wanted to catch you while you were talking about Jay in terms of what they were doing independent, because for our listeners out there who know the history, you know, about Rockefeller, you know, him, you know, Dane, you know, Biggs, you know, shout out to all of them, Ty Special, everybody in that circle. You know, they were like, you know, that's why they started it, because they were like, nobody, you know, I mean, we got to give our listeners a little bit of history, and you've given so much already, and so much more. We got a little bit of time left, because people got to understand back in the day, you know, it wasn't like you had YouTube to really push you out there, so you had to get on your grind. And with Jay, a lot of people didn't want to sign Jay. You know, Russell at the time, they eventually did. Rockefeller did sign with Def Jam, you know, as a parent company in terms of the distribution. But Russell at one time, Russell missed out on Nas, and I think he had missed out on Jay at one point. He didn't. He wasn't really interested in signing either one of them.
And they missed out on Thirstin too.
And and they missed out. So did you actually talk? And that's what I want to get to you about, because you talked, because we had you know, in our early conversation, you know, you and me had about, you know, about you being independent, about how you had, you know, before we got you on, you had talked about the beauty of independence and how you were doing this yourself. Now, were you in talks during that time in the 90s when you were really getting it back going again, were you pursuing a deal, or did you decide from the beginning that you were going to do this on your own? Because you already talked about the producers weren't giving the beat. What was the label negotiation like?
I never knew what independent was. Nobody was trying to be independent back then. Everybody was trying to get a record deal. So, I guess the more I shopped around and things like that, the more rejection I would get, The more I did it myself, the more ground I was breaking. At first I was just recording on a 4-track and I was making demo tapes, on cassette. So I'm over here running around with like 7 demo tapes. So you could consider that shit a whole album complete. You know what I mean? So after a while, I just compiled all my demo tapes into one CD when CDs started happening.
Right.
And I released it. I got a call from a internet company that they wanted to buy hundreds of copies of my demos on CD, which became the Skillionare album. And I mean, once that album was released like that, and I'm talking about recorded on a 4-track, no good sound quality. I didn't even know what a mix down was at the time, but I'm out here selling hundreds of albums. And I got a call from LL Cool J, man. He gave me a record deal. Then the Beastie Boys gave me a record deal. And, the record deals started coming like crazy. All these different new up-and-coming labels were happening. And, even Def Jam had us at the table, to put us on to be the next thing. And, I mean, the only thing I took out of all of them deal situations was the Game Records single, because it was the only thing that was fair. Everything was like a robbery and pigeonholed me. Wendy Day from the Rap Coalition used to handle all my deals. Wendy was a big help in my career and just teaching me and me learning the process or just how things had to happen. And I wound up not taking any deals back then because of that. Like I said, I didn't want to be independent. I did not want to do all this work myself. I don't think nobody wants to do all of this work. Just had no choice.
Okay.
So
hold that thought for a second, Thirstin, because I want to ask. Me and King want to ask you this: what is an actual record label deal meeting? The negotiations, what is it actually like? What do artists really need to understand when you're sitting down at that table? Take us through that process.
All right. All I'm going to tell all these artists out there, care what label you're sitting at and they're offering you a deal, everything that they tell you while you're sitting at that table and you're at that meeting, everything they say to you is not included in that contract. That when the contract comes, is totally the opposite of everything they said to you. That's first and
tell them how big
foremost.
that contract is.
I mean, sometimes the contract could be 50 pages, 100 pages. It could be simple 10 pages at times, but it's not going to be what they told you in the meeting. You're going to have to go through that contract with a lawyer that's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars just to get them to reiterate what they said at the meeting and have that included in the contract. That's where the fuckery is. And then that's what's always kept me away from those deals because, it's just too much. And then, just trying to have an attorney when you're brand new going into this, you're not getting any money out of the deal yet, but you're gonna have to spend all these thousands. It's kind of hard to do, So that's the only reason I've always stayed the independent route, and I'm able to do what I want. I was able to drop an album whenever I felt like it. When you're signed to a label, you have to follow their guidelines and do as they say and release when they say and things like that. So I'm kind of grateful that I never had a deal because it never pigeonholed me as an artist. I was always able to do anything I wanted creatively, however I wanted to. And that helped me grow more than anything as an artist. You know, I never had no boundaries put on me, so it just kept me happy about it. I think being an artist signed to a label and going through all of the things, I probably would have gave up a while ago if I was locked into a label where they telling me, oh, no, we shelving you for 2-3 years. Oh, no, you can't do a feature on so-and-so's album, because they have that kind of control on you. So I was able to just exercise myself as an artist, man, and really learn how to be creative and just do my own thing, you know, trial and error. I learned so much from it, so can't complain about none of it.
But the honesty,
there's another journey that you embarked in, like while you was making the transition. You started becoming a part of the television game, man, and you started doing the Lyricist Lounge. And that's one of the most dopest shows that I've seen from the late 90s that duplicated hip-hop in a more positive light, and it showed lyricism at the forefront. What was that experience like?
I mean, first and foremost, before the Lyricist Lounge show, which came about in 1999, I had already started working at MTV in 1994. So
wow.
I had got the job at MTV on the work release program from prison.
Okay.
And you know, there were people at MTV who actually wanted to help this organization I was a part of called the Amera ICANN Foundation for Social Change, you know, which I was mandatorily had to be a part of just for my, you know, to benefit my release of prison. Now, you know, when I got to MTV, I worked as a production assistant, and I worked behind the scenes with on-air promos and, you know, different commercials and all the big shows you can imagine at MTV. But I was already there for a good 6 years before the Lyricist Lounge show even came about. Now, you know, I was one of the creators of the Lyricist Lounge show along with Wordsworth and other artists. And then, you know, the show happened in 99. So, you know, I became a part of the show. And, I mean, it was a beautiful thing because it was the same thing, like us just freestyling. It was effortless, man. This was just natural and easy to do. But, you know, collaborating and working with a bunch of people behind the scenes, you know, like writers groups and things like that gave me so much experience, man, and so much know-how and just how everything will work, like as a cast member and a writer for a television show. I mean, one of the greatest experiences of my life, man.
Man, and I mean, for you to be able to meet guys like, you know, Punch Mouth, you know, Punchline and Wordsmith, you know, those guys, you know, are living legends, you know, in their own right. I mean, so this is 1994. So this is before, like, we're really singing, because hip-hop is already in full swing then. But, I mean, we're still not into that era where it's, like, really become, because it's still semi-underground back then, you know, so we're still not really seeing.
I mean, in 94, okay, hip-hop was already mainstream. But
right, it was mainstream.
It's still, when I started working at MTV, it was still all rock and roll. You know, where rock and roll dominated their time slots, man. They probably had your MTV Raps, but that was about it. You know, Video Music Box was already and things like that. I mean, Video Music Box been popping since the 80s for all the people who really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you're getting all of this in New York City way beforehand. So it's like if you lived in New York, the hip-hop was already mainstream all this time because this is all that we were surrounded by. It was played on our stations and all that. You know, a lot of the rest of the country didn't get a lot of it till later, but we was right there at the forefront, absorbing it all, man. So it was mainstream in our eyes in New York City already.
Got you.
But
Got you.
that show was definitely groundbreaking once it came in '99, and Master Fool, who's also my rhyme partner and my artist, became the star of the Lyricist Lounge show.
Mm-hmm.
So everything got that.
I mean, dude. We're getting all of this history and the paths you've intertwined with, the people you've met, the experiences you've had. I mean, like we said from the intro, your story is comparable to the legends of the game. I mean, in terms of what it has encompassed. So as you gained all the experience working on MTV with that, and then of course, we fast forward to '99 when you drop your single. I got to go back to it again. So when we look at it back in the day, this is before streaming. This is before Apple Music. This is before Tidal. Matter of fact, because for context and reference, Ice-T, when he got into his issue with Time Warner with the Body Count album, and he went to Atomic Pop, and that was this is like back in the mid-'90s. So this is the first time I hear about an artist going to an internet company that distributes music. So when you talked about internet company, was reached out to you and was buying like hundreds of your copies of your CD that will become the Skillionare LP. I mean, you're basically like, which people need to really give respect and appreciation to. You're pretty much one of the rappers on the front line during that time before it becomes, look, you was on the independent route of internet sales and they ain't know it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So,
ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean,
go
ahead.
The name of the company was SandboxAutomatic.com. I'll never forget it. They asked to buy 100 copies of my Skillionaire album. I didn't even have 100 copies on CD yet. So I'm like, all right, what I'm going to do? I had got $1,000 advance for a record single somebody was going to press. And I took that $1,000 and I went and pressed me 1,000 CDs. And I remember I delivered it to Sandbox Automatic, and they called me back within 3 days and told me they were sold out. They needed another 100.
Whoa!
And then they hit me back again within 3 days. They were sold out again. By the fourth time that they actually read up for me, now I gotten calls from all the internet sites that sold music, because it wasn't selling download. They were selling physical copies that they would mail to you. So now I had my CDs all over the internet. So the internet actually helped, birth my career, because without them, I didn't have the promotional money to be out there like that. I didn't have a lot of things. So it just helped me have a global fan base being in an internet store. My sales were coming from everywhere. And not to mention, I was just recently featured on the Soundbombing 2 album from Raucous. So they had major promotions with that. And I just rode the wave of their promotion, and my album did just as good.
Dog, what was that like in terms of when you found out that like your shit was really moving like that? I mean, how did that feel? Like dude, like you have 4 sellouts in a row. I mean, what was that feeling like?
I mean, it stayed continuous. I'm gonna tell you what it was like, man. I was flat broke. I had just got kicked out of my projects. My mother just passed away. I was living with a girlfriend, going through hell, and most of it because I had quit the job at MTV, and then I was also a counselor in group homes. And when my mother passed away, I quit every job, and I said I'm going to pursue my career, And I mean, I suffered for a good 6 to 8 months before that album started selling like that. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
that album started selling, it put me right back on my feet, like, instantly. You know, I was able to do everything from, you know, get a new apartment, get a car, get out of the situation I was in, and it helped me buy more equipment, and, it just launched me from there. So by the time a year went by, I had the second album ready in the same form, you know. So I was ready to follow it up when I felt like the sales were starting to go down. So I just stayed on top of it, and that's the consistency I was talking about that Jay was doing. I learned that every year you got to have another one on deck, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Power 9 Life series on how he patterned that out, because he dropped Volume 1 in 97, Volume 2 in 98, Volume 3 in 99.
Yeah.
Kept on following it up.
Yeah. And then Rock La Familia in 2000. For those that don't know, and that was actually supposed to be a compilation album. That's another story in itself. But that was supposed to be a compilation. In 2001, he drops Blueprint. 2002, Blueprint 2. So yeah, I mean,
gotta feed your audience.
Yeah, I mean, K Reno, he dropped 7 albums in one day. We can't forget the Ambassador, the God, the E40 of the Bay. I mean, how he has just dropped stuff consistently over the years. When you realized, Thurstin, that you really, really, really had a fan base, what was it like when you because one thing about it is, you go out and you meet your peoples, what is it like when you start doing shows and you really are like interacting with your fans and you're really seeing the love and appreciation for your craft, especially with what you've been through and what you put into it. How gratifying is that?
Oh, it's massive, man. I mean, even in my own neighborhood, like I said, when I started doing music, I did music that was almost totally opposite of the person I really was. I wasn't trying to do street stuff and all that, I wanted to do the comedy, imagination thing. So even some of my own people that were around me didn't get it. They weren't into my music. People who lived in my neighborhood and things like that, because I was coming from left field. And I mean, not that upset me or anything, but when I started seeing I had fans everywhere, it really didn't matter who didn't like my stuff or who wasn't into it. I just focused on the people who were. And it's crazy because I remember I started doing a lot of shows around 98, 99. And honestly, when I was going to my shows, it's like majority of the crowd was white. White crowd who just loves hip-hop, lyrics, and imaginary things. So it just showed me a whole nother perspective of what I was doing. How to just appeal to everyone. And I learned that technique as well, because I'm an artist who I do what I want to do for what I want to like. But I also know how to do everything to shut everybody up. Like, don't say I can't do that, because I could do anything. I'm one of the most versatile artists I've ever seen. I've never seen that many artists be able to go so extreme in category and content and even within language, man. So it just showed me how to be well-rounded, and that's what I believe is helping me to last the test of time, man. 4 decades later and things like that, I'm still in hip-hop. I'm still relevant, I'm still setting trends. And I still don't have a major situation, but I still exist. You know what I mean?
Dude, when we look at
versatile range is when you diverse like that, you're able to collab with almost any type of artist. I'm talking from RZA, ODB, KRS-One, Eminem, Mortal Technique, Chino XL. The list goes on, man, because you got a heavy resume.
Yeah, I got joints with all of them,
One thing about Thurstin is, your creative range is, the only other artist I can think of that, that you have the imagination is the late, great MF Doom. I mean, you two, we don't want to imagine what hip-hop would be without both of you in it. That's why we're so glad both of you have contributed to it so heavy the way that you have, because hip-hop would be born without y'all. You know,
thank you.
Because you, I mean, dude, and I got to fast track it a little bit because we want to give our audience a full understanding of what you have done. Obviously, for those that know about the lowlights and what you all, you know, what you all did in terms of the fashion trends, the situation with Ralph Lauren himself. I mean, you appear in 2 documentaries, the HBO one and the Fresh Dress. I mean, and then you ultimately become a model. We're not even getting to the book yet, which correlates back to the internet when they talk about the book that comes out, and that sells out in 2 minutes. I mean,
yeah, that's when that sold through the Polo app, you know, through Ralph Lauren's app. We featured it for Christmas. It didn't last but minutes, man. You're right.
So how did that situation happen where, because obviously you all really put Polo on the map in the hood, you know, and really, how did you parlay that into actually becoming a model for Ralph Lauren?
Well, I believe, you know, through all my contributions, the Polo company acknowledged it after realized how much involved I was with their own brand.
Mm-hmm.
So they invited me, man. They invited me to come be in the documentary with Ralph. You know, they invited me to be a model. I modeled the Snow Beach line when they reissued it. But also, you know, my book had a lot to do with the reissues that they put back out because, you know, the company bought a bunch of my books on the day it was released. And, you know, this is what they use to figure out what to do retro-wise. They never did a retro ever before until they got my book and they retroed everything they seen us wearing in the book, you know, which was smart because we had built a market for his vintage, and we had some of these items going from $5,000 to $10,000 a jacket and things like that. So they came back and they created a lot of these things, you know, and they cornered the market once again with it. But I mean, for me, it was an honor and a pleasure, man, just to be a part of all of that.
Yeah, because the Snow Beach line, of course, everybody that remembers the Can It Be All So Simple Wu-Tang video, you know, where Raekwon was wearing that Snow Beach pullover, you know, and that was like, you know, there are certain outfits, you know, and sometimes you never know with a video, but sometimes this is why, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you have to have a dope-ass director doing videos. Because we're going to get to your directorial endeavors, too. We're not leaving that out. Because it's one thing about you have to have the dope visuals. And certain outfits just stand out. And for that Wu-Tang video, like that pullover is like one of the joints that everybody remembers Raekwon wearing, which was a polo joint. I mean, you know, so, you know, it's, and for you to become a brand ambassador to them, Thirstin, is like incredible because you're from the hood, you're from the streets, so you understand what the streets really, really, really are about with it in terms of fashion. And like, yo, this is the hot shit that like everybody is really, really, really respecting. And you're that voice for them. Not to mention it's a nice payday, I assume, too. You know, so, but yeah, man. So, I mean, you know, so at this point we talked about your beginnings in rap, you know, your career that's in full bloom, you know, you being independent, being a model, and then being an author. So, I mean, then producing your stuff. So then we got to get into the directorial elements of it. Because I saw the Kung Fu video you did, and the shit was fucking bananas. I'm like, dude, I seen different styles, the crane, the monkey style. I'm like, yo, the brass. I'm like, yo, this. All right, let us find out that you a black belt on the low and you ain't tell us this either, because you done damn did near everything else too.
Yeah. Let me tell you what's crazy, because everybody always even when I was doing the shoot itself, you know, some of the crew was like, you know, yo, you've been practicing a lot, I see, man. And I'm like, listen, man, I never practiced at all. I just seen every karate movie in the book. So it's like all that shit was freestyling. It's natural for me. You know what I mean? I'm a big kung fu movie connoisseur, man. I've watched it over and over and over and over throughout the years, so where I know all the moves. I know, and even like when you watch the film, I'm every voiceover you hear. I mimicked the voices. I did everything in the film, you know, because that's how much of a karate movie buff I am, man. So it was like, it was a natural thing for me to do that, man. There was no effort. There was no practicing. There was none of that. We wrote it out and we went there and shot it, man.
I mean,
and the other video I seen of you with the So Insinuating, that video was wild, man. I was like, yo, you taking it back to the Rambo era with that one.
oh, good luck. Yeah, that was something else, man. You know me, if you notice in all my videos, I try to be unpredictable. You know, when you watch a next video, you can never predict what angle I'm going to come from. You know what I mean? As far as the creative idea, I always try to make it as different as possible, man, and have a lot of shock value, you know, like to shock people, man. Like, wow, I didn't expect that from him, you know? Like, that's always my angle, and, you know, I write all of my treatments to all my videos alone. You know, I create the entire scenery and all that, and then, you know, I put it together. I will prep a video. Like, I prepped that karate movie for like 6 months before we went out to shoot it, and then, you know, I directed it with my brother Lo, Box Lo, who you know, he directs most of my videos with me. And he's also the editor on a lot of them. But dude, I mean, it takes a lot of work, man. It takes a lot of planning, you know?
Yeah. But when I saw that video and handed it low, I was like, that dude, I'm like, dude, you like really, really, it was beautiful because it was such an homage to the, I mean, you even had like the dub overs that are like always all 5 seconds. I mean, everything in terms of the, because people don't always talk enough about the correlation of kung fu movies and hip hop culture in terms of how we, you know, and we're showing our age. Look, Saturday afternoons on USA Network watching the Kung Fu Theater. I mean,
you see how we were talking about New York City and hip hop? It was the same thing for New York City with the Kung Fu movie. This was before the movies were on all these different channels on television. You had to go to the Dukes. Yep. And, I mean, it wasn't a theater. It was theaters. If they had 10, 20 theaters on the Strip, trust me, half of them were playing Kung Fu movies all day long, 2, 3 movies, you know, a ticket. But that was a big part of my upbringing, going to these theaters. You know, even when I was a young kid, I would go with my uncles. They would put me on to all the karate movies. Half of the time, you could just walk up outside the theater and watch half of that kung fu flick on a little TV they had displaying outside, just, you know, to get you to go in there. But that was a big thing, man. To me, I look at kung fu movies and all that as part of hip-hop's birth. You know, they're one of the things, they're one of the elements that helped create hip-hop into what it became. If you watch the way they would dress in the karate movies, that was the styles you've seen a lot of the B-boys emulate. The breakdancers tying up their pants with the shoestrings on the bottom, you know, to give it that karate movie look. Even a lot of the breakdance moves came out of karate movies. I mean, watch those movies, you'll see massive breakdance moves. You know, so...
Oh, yeah.
Kung Fu movies is a big part of hip-hop, man. Just the birth of it, period.
Man, shout out to the legends, like, of course, you know, Jet Li, Bruce Lee, rest in peace, Bolo Ying, Sonny Chiba, all of them, man. I mean, you know, movies like the Super Ninjas, Welcome to Into the Dragon. Jackie Chan. Can't forget Jackie Chan. 5 Fingers of Death.
In my eyes, Jackie Chan is the greatest ever. Nobody has ever done it like him, movie-wise. From his stunts to his choreography and all that.
Because he does his own stunts.
Not just that he does his own stunts, his choreography is unmatched in Kung Fu. And, not to mention that he did start out in all the old karate movies. The same ones from the 70s, Shaw Brothers and things like that. He was a part of all that.
Yeah, Run Shaw. Yeah.
Sure.
One thing about it, too, is when I read the Wu-Tang manual, shout out to RZA. RZA talked about how him and Old Dirty, would just go to those theaters and watch those movies and how it would inspire, it would bring the impetus for what the Wu-Tang Clan would be. And obviously, you doing what you did, in terms of how I was just wondering, yo, how much did this nigga have to beat somebody's ass using Kung Fu, or did he just use a regular 1-2 knockout on him? Did you ever use any of that when you actually threw hands with somebody?
Nah, I'm the 1-2 knockout dude. All the broken bottle upside your head.
Gotta hit it with the Brownsville 2-piece.
The Brownsville 2-piece. But don't get it twisted. I do know all that shit, though. Because, I fought. I went to PAL, man, and did karate, man, back in the early 80s and things like that. So it was something I was always interested in. And I'm a dude where I never touched any sports. I'm not a sports fan at all, nor did I ever play or do any sport. I never played video games. I never played cards. I was always all hip-hop, man. All hip-hop or all whatever's going on in the streets. I didn't really dib and dab in a lot of those other extracurricular activities. I was kind of against it, man. But karate and boxing and things like that, I was always interested in. Always had a place for me.
Man,
it was always something out of the box. Because, see, when you're creative people, surface things don't really move you. It's like stuff that goes beyond that the masses can't see. I'm kind of like that, too. When I was young, all my own kung fu weapons, man. I would make my nunchucks. I would have wooden swords and nunchucks. I would make bow and arrows, and I was always into, whatever had to do with the kung fu and being creative. And if I couldn't afford the stuff, I would make it. I probably was a ninja for every Halloween, but I would make my own ninja costume. I would make my mask out of a T-shirt. I would make all the weapons, and things like that.
Man, I mean, the level, one thing about it is that when you live in the hood, a lot of times you don't always have access to everything everybody else does, so it teaches you to survive on your own. The level of creativity and genius and ingenuity that you have displayed throughout the years is just, I mean, that's just something you're born with. And I don't think we can say enough about how much it really takes to be able to do it at that level of just being that self-sufficient. I mean, you hear...
go ahead. It takes lacking something because the creativity comes with the lack of. And, that's a big part of my story as well, poverty. Poverty played a big part of my life to me not having things. So I would either imagine them, but imagine them to an extent to where I would have to create them myself if I couldn't afford them. So I got to credit poverty, man, for so much because without it, I wouldn't have been the creative person I was, man. I look at all these kids who grow up spoiled and having it all, and they a lot of times they don't amount to shit. They're so spoiled and everything is usually thrown on their lap. But you take a kid who doesn't have anything and see how much they appreciate the smallest things or how inventive they become with nothing. This is what great motherfuckers is made out of, man. Nothing. So there's a beauty in all of it.
You know, one thing we can appreciate so much, Thirstin, because we understand the independent hustle. We understand what it means. You know, as I've said many times on this show, shout out to King, you know, because this is his baby here. And, you know, when he came in the game, you know, he didn't have the major cosigns, and this was independent for him. And, you know, and to come in and to be able to accomplish what he's done, you know, and for myself and others to be part of that is so humbling. It's and to interview people like yourself, when we hear you talk about your upbringing and to be so open and honest about it, because so many artists try to downplay it or they're disingenuous when they speak about their struggle, you embrace it in a way that is so genuine that it really gives people an understanding of how far you have come and what you have overcome in obstacles to not only succeed but excel against all odds. I mean, you know, this is special, you know, and I mean, just looking at what you've done, I mean.
Oh yeah, we got to expound in that too, man. We got to talk about the imprints that you formed, like, you know, Skillionare Films.
Yeah.
Your own film company. Like, you have anything else that you're
Film.
releasing this year that's coming out from that?
Oh man, I just released a new video on Monday, man. The Return of the Polo Rican. So, you know, I release constantly on that. I got a bunch of things going to continuously drop all year. You know, we do a lot of work in Skillillusions. I probably got 20 folders on my desk now of shoots that I want to do. You know, I've been held back a little because of COVID. Not able to jump out there how I want. But I mean, that's you're going to see a lot of things going on, man. That never ends.
I mean, this is the level of work that you've put in. I mean, and we can't, and we got to also add one other attribute to you as well, comedian.
Yo, you know, everybody who sees me in person always says that I'm not funny when they see me. You know what I mean? I'm a serious dude. I'm a real serious person, man. That's why it's hard for people to believe that I'm the same guy making all of this comedy shit. Because when you see me, I'm stone faced. You know what I mean? Like, I'm from Brownsville, man. I'm a product of my environment of just, you know, the harsh realities of life. So my poker face is like 24/7.
Right.
But yeah, I even considered doing stand up, man. Like, it's something that's still in the back of my head because, you know, I'm a writer. I could write the jokes all day long, you know?
And one thing about it, too, you know, that we really have to respect, you know, shout out to our brothers and sisters locked down of all colors and shades, you know, who represent the hip-hop nation, you know, and beyond that. You know, you did a video about prison recipes, you know, and that really, really was eye-opening. Like, it really shows that when you're incarcerated, how you have to really make do. But it was just, it shows the human side of what, you know, because nobody likes the idea of being incarcerated, but you brought so much of a human element to it in terms of just about what it's like when, you know, you have to make it by any means. What inspired you to really do it at that level, to do it?
I mean, exactly what you said. Like, it was really, these are real recipes really from prison. What inspired me was my time in prison, learning how to use these recipes to survive. So, you know, I just thought I would do that for real because I've seen a lot of, like, comedy sketches and things like that where they would kind of make fun of prison cooked cuisine or recipe, but they wouldn't actually do it. They would always do it as a joke or gimmick, but not actually make the recipe. So I was like, this never been done before I did it. So I had to tell myself, yo, you got to do this. It's never been done. So I put together the show. It was the actual show. There are many episodes. Jail recipes.
Mm-hmm.
Recipes so good, you got to try them at home. Because I also wasn't trying to emulate being in prison. I just wanted to show the recipes I learned from prison, bringing you these recipes to your home,
Right.
So there's another show coming. Like I revamped the cooking show, and there's a whole new show coming out of that you guys will see soon. Chef Survival Kid is here to stay.
Man, look, I mean, and then of course we can't forget the polo product video that you put out with the polo soap, where you had the robe with the towel.
Oh, how low can you go? Yeah.
Yes. Look, the same way I'm a Nike dude. Shout out to the swoosh Air Jordan. I mean, your DNA just reads dope on all the low, man. I mean, there's so many layers to you, man. You are the walking epitome, the excellent example of what everything means in the culture in terms of fashion, comedy, originality, creativity, and just being a great guy. I mean, because it's always character. It's always character that takes you everywhere else. I mean, when you look at where hip hop is today and where it started from, how do you feel about a lot of the new artists coming in today with their just how they're doing things in terms of the fashions and the rhyme styles, the overall productions? But what's your take on it?
I mean, I can't understand half of this stuff, man. But no disrespect to them on the same note. I don't try to understand it. Some of it goes against my era's rules and regulations, but it's not our era at this point. This is for the youth to translate it as they own. I mean, I have children, so I'm educated through my children about, certain trends and things like that. But, it's really not always for us to have an opinion on, because this is evolution. I mean, whoever had an opinion on how anything evolved in the whole existence of the planet, it happens, man. And it's always going to happen in a way that you can never predict. So I just hope the best for everybody, because one thing that is evolving within our culture is the ignorance, but it's getting greater. Yeah. So it's like that's what's happening a lot more in the music. The music of our time was a little more educating. I could actually tell you a lot of words in my vocabulary that I learned from a rap song and things like that. Well, today they only teaching drug abuse and sag your pants down all the way to your ass like you want to get raped or something. But it's crazy,
I think
man.
that
like
comes
I said,
from that comes from the simple fact that with labels, they're like the sole controller of that sound, because there's plenty of dope hip hop out there, even people from our era that's still putting it down. It's just somewhere down the line we lost that control. Not us as in creators, but the culture. The gatekeepers kind of let things ride for a certain bit.
Well, the vultures actually control the direction of it, because they're the ones putting it out there, the mainstream. And I believe a lot of times they're taking the more ignorant music and feeding it to our people, to help sabotage us more. And that's going on heavy, because anything educational or uplifting, you're not going to hear much about it. They're going to throw it in the back burner. But it's up to us more than anything. We can't blame everybody else for what's happening. It's up to us to educate our own, inspire our own, and and give the messages that it need be. Even me, I feel, my music content has to change. I'm a criminal rapper and crazy fashion, robbery, Steven, explicit lyrics. Like, this is my kind of music that I like, but I'm also aware of what I might be doing to the people who follow my music or the youth that look up to it, thinking this is the cool way to be, which is it's just me being creative or artistic. It's entertainment to me, but some of the world perceives it differently.
Well, the one thing about it, though, Thirstin, is this, because you're a real dude, and one thing about it is you had to go through certain things that I'm sure you didn't want to have to deal with, but you're still standing. But you are a testament of what street life is and what it can do, and in terms of the worst, getting incarcerated, but at the best, coming out of your situation and thriving. But you're authentic the entire way. You're the genuine article, like a Ralph Lauren polo sweater. You know what I'm saying? So you really understand what it is out there. Where a lot of artists, and me and King talk about this. We talked about this with our guests on and off the air. A lot of artists get out there on the street level thinking that they really understand the streets, and I'm like, no, this is something you just don't jump into. Once you get in the industry, it's either something you've known about before you got in the industry, or you stay away from once you get in it, because this ain't something you just jump into. And we've seen a lot of artists, unfortunately, get caught up, lose their life even, trying to play something they really don't understand, but I wouldn't say at all, if you feel that there are certain levels of your music you need to, modify, I think it's great the way it is because it's authentically who you are and it's not fabricated. And you have a story to tell from your experience.
Exactly.
But what is important is that you have to understand is that when you listen to albums like Illmatic, Straight Outta Compton, America's Most Wanted, Rhyme Pays, Straight Checking Them, these were street albums in a sense that they weren't glorifying the streets. It was just talking about what was really going on from a perspective of reporting.
Also, reporting it.
Yeah. But when we hear albums talking about, drinking lean and popping pills, it's like, look, I'm going to be real about my age. I'm 42. I'll be 43 this week. And it's like that's not the era I grew up listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Drug culture was not – the most niggas was talking about on wax was smoking weed. That's it. Weed, the last time I checked, ain't killed nobody. But you're right. You're right, Thirstin. There's a lot of stuff being put out there that the youth of today really don't understand because it's been fashionable. It's been fashionized in the aspect of, there's nothing cool about being a drug addict. We've seen people lose their lives being drug addicts. And in terms of some of the fashion, I'm going to just be real. I'm just going to say it. Tight jeans ain't my thing. I'm from the era we rock our shit baggy. That's just what it is.
We came from the era where the only people that wore tight jeans were Garth Brooks and Urkel. They were the only ones.
Wow.
And the women wearing stuff. Yeah. Dudes be wearing them jeans tighter than the women do, and I'm like, it's not. There's a difference between wearing something that fits and then something that's just straight too tight. And I'm like, nah, I'm okay with it in terms of how I rock stuff.
But hey, you guys had me almost 2 hours, man. My stomach is growling. I gotta go eat, man.
Get your food.
Starving.
Get your food, Thirstin. We are, a living legend like yourself. We had to have you on because we had to have you tell your story. We had to document it. There's still so much more we haven't talked about. You are welcome back anytime. We love you so much. Thank you for being on. You're welcome back anytime, man. Thank you. 2 L's up always.
2 L's up. We'll set up a part 2 for another time after this airs, all right?
Yes, sir.
I'll make sure breakfast beforehand.
Yeah, I about to hit this breakfast up myself, man. What, 10:44?
Yeah.
I got to get mine.
All right, thanks for having me, man, and I appreciate y'all. And, you know, Thirstin Howl was here to stay, man. Definitely going to hear a lot more from you.
Most definitely, man. We'll definitely keep in touch, bro.
All right, love is love. Thank you.
Much love,
man. On that note, we out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all been biting my style. I don't just smack motherfuckers up for no reason.
It's the return of the Polo Rican.
Double L General con la corona from the MOP streets of Saratoga. Boricua soy, respect my flag. Ghetto bastard, check my pass. Horsey socks with a G-Shock watch. Catch me fresh in a P-side shop. Polo cologne, every color I own. The crown automatically come with the throne. Gucci frame, the same 2010. The Vovo, the darkest tip. Polo knits crisp with a bitch. Gucci girl curl. Polo mint, big ponies only. Olympic horses, stampede. Canteen, Polo cigarettes. Polo candy, water jug mug. Coffee cup, fireman truck. Or only one filled my drink. Rolling blunt, ran through some stores. With the Fila King, and if it dropped to the floor, never leave a thing. More Elise in the streets. Matching hat and bag. Hunchback walk with my pockets fat. Fortified live, synchronized crime. Take everything I think is my size. Not a fat bomb, dawn shit is ugly. Polo vest still killed with rugby. Hill figure gone. No ducker coming back. Checkerboard shorts, lumberjack hat. Fuck with me, gente. Full length decente. Wear my chain like Kunta Kinte. How the shoes look funny. For the money, turtlenecks and specs before mugging. Eco no puedo, no toco eso. Tiki soup like I'm on the west coast. Polo peak coat, pollo frito. I gotta go hard when I rep my people. Jeans cuffed, clean cut. Nefertiti leaning, kissing king. Smack motherfuckers up for no reason.
It's the return of the Polo Rican.
The Burberry, payday. The Pele on the train with a headache. Wanna claim my click. Took no life, put his name on it. Too late for the polo crown. Never took it off, never put it down. Skillmatic, still at it. Rugby store, all ill patches. Low mansion, romance and dick. Pockets got both hands in. South Pole, never been fly. Crucified twice. Whoever told that lie? Horsey socks with a G-Shock watch. Cross like hat, that bebop box. Show your low. Vintage gear addict, Louis luggage published in Paris. No rockaware over here. Benetton, calm, not to scare. Ties and tuxedo. Wherever we go, Brooklyn, Popeye, Latino, Armani, Sacati, if you rock it properly. Ralphie is starring in top monopolies. LRG, never felt hardly. Feel the same way about Ed Hardy. Mohawk thoughts, skinny jean dreams. Yeah, Calvin Klein, no friend of mine. He been played out since '85. True religion, no division. Got my gold cross from the crucifixion. Got the polo horse on the super fishing. The logos are local, I do it different. Smack motherfuckers up for no reason.
It's the return of the Polo Rican.
The motherfucking Polo Rican. Big thirsty, big low. You already know how I do my style. My little items is ridiculous already. I ain't gotta explain nothing no more. You already see what I'm wearing on a regular occasion. Stop trying to study my style. It's futuristic. Get your telescopes out if you wanna study my style. I'm fly like that. You see my motherfucking pilot's license in my wallet, girl. The Polo Rican.
Check out the skills, right? I already peeped the scene. I gave the nigga 2 shirts, and you know what he gave me back? A hat that was mine. that was mine.